Hey, have you heard any of these songs that are generated?
I haven't listened to all of them, but I've sure been hearing the chatter about them.
Yeah, the chatter is just everywhere right now. And to really grasp why this is such a massive deal, we have to kind of look back at the reality fans have lived with for decades.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, since April of 1970, when the breakup happened, there was this exact, crushing, emotional finality.
The music just stopped. It was a very hard, immovable stop.
Exactly. And since then, you know, we have lost 2 of the 4 members. For decades, everyone listening right now simply accepted that the catalog was entirely finite.
There was going to be no more, no reunions, no miraculous discoveries in a vault somewhere.
You could throw on a record and just marvel at the complex, swirling arrangements on Sgt. Pepper, but you always knew exactly where the boundaries of the catalog were.
You knew you had reached the absolute end of the road.
And we all made our peace with that finality a long time ago. We grieved the loss, we accepted the boundaries, and we just moved forward.
But the introduction of artificial intelligence has entirely upended that universally accepted reality.
I mean, it has ripped that closed book completely wide open.
And this specific band has suddenly become ground zero for a massive, unprecedented dilemma in the music world.
They are essentially the ultimate test pilots for the concept of a digital afterlife.
And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense why it is happening to them first.
Because the stakes are higher than with anyone else.
Precisely. Their catalog is definitively the most valuable in the entire world.
But more importantly, the voices of the members who have passed away are arguably the most recognizable voices in the history of recorded audio.
This isn't just some fringe technological experiment anymore. It is a massive cultural flashpoint.
We are standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at a question that nobody has a definitive answer to yet.
Where exactly does the machine begin and where does the music end?
And I want you, the listener, to understand that this is no longer just theoretical internet chatter or obscure forum gossip.
Not at all.
This technology has already breached the highest echelons of industry recognition. Last year, they won a competitive Grammy Award for the song Now and Then.
And we urgently need to emphasize the word competitive there.
Spot on. It was not a Lifetime Achievement Trophy.
Right. It was not some polite ceremonial nod to their historic legacy handed out off camera.
It was an actual competitive Grammy for Best Rock Performance. Just think about the sheer absurdity of that for a second. Look at who they were up against in that category.
They beat out massive, currently active modern rock acts. They were up against Pearl Jam, Green Day, Ideals, and St. Vincent.
A band that literally broke up over 50 years ago took home the gold. And they beat out some of the hardest working bands touring today.
And it was all made possible by this emerging technology.
The acceptance speech at the Grammys added such a poignant layer to that victory, too.
Ono Lennon accepted the award on the band's behalf.
And he told the audience to play this music for their kids.
He said he felt like the world simply cannot afford to forget about people like them.
It wasn't a victory lap about beating modern punk or alternative bands. It was a desperate plea for cultural memory.
It highlighted the sheer emotional weight of keeping this music alive for the next generation, bridging the gap between a legendary past and a technologically unfathomable future.
But getting to that Grammy stage was definitely not a smooth ride. Let's ask you to put yourself in the shoes of a fan back in June of 2023.
Oh, the panic was immediate and intense.
It was absolute chaos. Paul McCartney casually announced during an interview that there was going to be a new song.
And he openly mentioned that artificial intelligence was involved.
Fans were absolutely livid. People naturally assumed the absolute worst.
They pictured some synthetic digital ghost of John Lennon conjured up from training data by a soulless algorithm.
I thought it was going to be a robotic impersonation, a complete betrayal of the band's organic legacy.
The backlash was so fierce that McCartney actually had to scramble and release public statements to set the record straight.
He had to calm everyone down and clarify that absolutely nothing was synthetically created.
He assured the public that everything they were going to hear was real and that all 4 members physically played on the track.
Ringo Starr offered some incredibly emotional validation alongside that, too.
He emphasized that they would never, ever fake John's voice.
He described the process of working on the track as the closest they would ever come to having him back in the room with them.
For the surviving members, it was a profoundly emotional experience, not some cold technological stunt.
So let's break down what they actually did, because the technology involved here is mind-blowing.
The origin of Now and Then is famously just a very low-fidelity, muddy cassette tape.
John Lennon recorded it on a boombox in his Dakota apartment before he died. The tape had a simple label on it. It just said, "To Paul."
Just thinking about that label is
Oh,
heartbreaking. And they actually tried to finish this exact song back in the 1990s, didn't they?
They did, during the anthology sessions.
Yeah.
But the cassette was just a complete mess.
There's this loud, buzzing electrical hum in the background that they couldn't isolate.
John's vocals were completely buried under his heavy, thudding piano playing.
George Harrison reportedly hated the muddy sound quality so much that he refused to keep working on it.
The technology simply wasn't there to separate the frequencies, so the project hit a brick wall and was completely shelved.
Which brings us to machine audio learning, affectionately known as ML.
This is the stem separation technology developed by Peter Jackson's team during the making of the Get Back documentary.
And this raises a crucial point about how we define good artificial intelligence.
What Peter Jackson's team did falls strictly under the category of extractive technology.
Meaning it doesn't create anything new?
Exactly. It did not invent a single note. It didn't generate a performance. It simply learned how to listen.
The team trained the software specifically on what a piano sounds like versus what a human vocal cord sounds like.
You can think of it as an incredibly complex audio microscope.
The system mathematically mapped the frequencies on that muddy cassette tape.
And it meticulously peeled John's vocal away from the pounding piano and the intrusive room noise.
It performed a mathematical muting without bleeding any of the audio.
It cleaned the signal perfectly, leaving just his isolated, pure voice.
Once they had that pristine vocal track, they handed it back to the surviving members to finally finish the job they started decades ago.
So the resulting track is a genuine four-way collaboration across time. You have John's actual voice from the late 70s.
You have George's acoustic and electric guitar parts that he recorded back in the 90s before he passed away.
You have Paul coming in with brand new additions, including a phenomenal new string arrangement and laying down a brilliant new bass track.
And of course, you have Ringo adding his signature drum fill.
It is all completely real. The technology merely rescued the performance from the murk of a cheap tape recorder.
I always compare this to taking an old, severely damaged film negative and doing a gorgeous 4K digital restoration.
You aren't changing the painting. You are just carefully wiping away 50 years of grime so you can finally see the brushstrokes.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the ethical safety of extractive technology.
It respects the original creation because it literally is the original creation.
However, there is an entirely different side to this coin.
If we cross over into the realm of generative artificial intelligence, things get incredibly complicated very fast.
This is where the story shifts from official historical restoration into the absolute wild west of the internet.
We have to talk about unauthorized deepfakes,
Specifically, a YouTube creator known as Limbs,
who effectively became patient zero for this phenomenon back in May of 2023.
Limbs used generative systems that were trained specifically on the vocal characteristics of the band members.
He produced 2 tracks that went massively viral.
The first one was a reimagining of Paul McCartney's 2013 solo track called New.
Paul was in his 70s when he recorded that. The generative technology mathematically stripped the age from his vocal cords.
It tightened the vibrato and restored his youthful high register so he sounded exactly like he did in his 20s.
And then, out of nowhere, an artificially generated John Lennon steps up to the microphone to sing harmony on the bridge out of thin air.
It is completely uncanny. Your brain just sort of short circuits trying to process it.
The second major project took a posthumous John Lennon song called Grow Old With Me.
Limbs built a massive, sweeping, full band arrangement around it.
He seamlessly inserted Paul's artificially generated voice to sing alongside John.
What is truly captivating about those viral tracks is not just the audio fidelity, but the way the listeners reacted to them.
If you read the comment sections on those videos, people aren't debating the technical merits of the software.
They are treating the experience like profound grief therapy.
Fans were leaving comments saying things like, "I start crying every time I hear this."
Or, "I never thought we would get a proper ending to this story."
It touches a deeply emotional nerve.
Even though the listeners know logically that the performance is mathematically generated by a computer,
The human brain processes the emotional resonance of those familiar voices singing together again as if it were entirely real.
So what does this all mean for the people who actually own the rights to this music?
Because there is a massive collision happening here between pure fan intent and corporate reality.
Limbs was very careful to label these tracks explicitly.
He put big disclaimers on them saying, "We love you, lads. No copyright infringement intended. This is an artificial intelligence creation."
The intent was clearly to craft a heartfelt, emotional tribute.
It was a love letter made audible, not a malicious attempt to deceive the public or forge a historical document.
But of course, the lawyers do not see it that way. How do you even copyright a voice?
Universal Music Group swooped in with heavy-handed takedown notices.
And almost overnight, the vast majority of these videos were wiped completely off the internet.
Which brings up the debate over whether those corporate takedowns are actually effective or just incredibly tone-deaf.
Many observers compare it to book banning.
When a massive corporation steps in to aggressively censor a fan project that is clearly labeled as a tribute, it often just triggers the Streisand effect.
It creates a level of forbidden mystique and free publicity that money simply cannot buy.
It makes people want to seek out the audio even more.
The fundamental problem for the rights holders is that the genie is completely out of the bottle.
Taking down one creator's YouTube channel does absolutely nothing to stop the sprawling, bizarre cottage industry of fan creations that is currently exploding online.
And this what-if factory that has sprung up is just wild to explore.
Fans are using these generative tools to probe every single historical absence or missed opportunity in the band's history.
You can go online right now and find entire albums where an artificially generated Paul sings John's solo songs.
And an artificially generated John sings Paul's solo songs.
It is an attempt to simulate an alternate timeline.
They're constructing a simulated 1970s where the band never split up and just kept making music together.
Think about the sheer scope of the Black Album projects.
Fans are using stem separation to tear apart brilliant solo records.
They will take John's Imagine album and George's All Things Must Pass album and meticulously isolate the individual instruments.
Right, they will strip away the session drummers, they will remove the original bass lines.
And then they remix those isolated stems.
They're trying to make it sound as though all four men were standing in the exact same room playing together in 1971.
And they don't stop there. They are adding generated backing vocals to George Harrison's solo debut,
completely reimagining the sonic landscape of his personal work.
My personal favorite, just from a historical irony standpoint, is the reverse engineering of I Wanna Be Your Man.
Oh, the Rolling Stones connection.
Exactly. The band famously wrote that song and gave it to the Rolling Stones in 1963.
The Stones turned it into this gritty, raw arrangement.
The original writers eventually did their own version, but it was much lighter.
Now, a half-century later, fans are using generative technology to make the original writers sing the song using the Stones' gritty arrangement.
50 years of rock history is just folding in on itself.
But while these projects are undeniably creative, they exist in a very murky, complicated ethical middle ground.
All of those fan projects rely on generative technology.
They are actively adding data that never existed.
They are creating vocal performances, emotional inflections, and musical choices that these men never actually made in real life.
Paul McCartney himself has voiced a very legitimate fear about this trajectory.
As the technology continues to improve at this exponential rate, it is going to become completely flawless.
Soon, the only thing separating a genuine historical recording from a fabricated deepfake will be a text disclaimer in the video description.
Intent and transparency are currently doing all the ethical heavy lifting.
And that disclaimer is what we might call the ethical load-bearing wall.
If we synthesize the core rule here, the framework becomes quite clear.
On one side, you have extractive technology, which works exclusively on what already exists.
It cleans, it separates, it restores, and it reveals. That is the ML technology.
But on the other side of that line is generative technology,
which synthesizes entirely new performances by recognizing and regurgitating complex patterns learned from old data.
This can be done with tremendous love and absolute transparency by fans who have zero intent to deceive anyone.
But it can just as easily be done terribly, anonymously, and with every intention of misleading the public for a quick profit.
The algorithm itself doesn't possess a moral compass.
It doesn't know the difference between a heartfelt tribute and a malicious forgery.
If that ethical load-bearing wall, the disclaimers removed, the entire structure of musical truth collapses.
This leads us to what is perhaps the most profound, unanswered philosophical question in this entire debate.
We have moved far beyond the technical question of whether a computer can convincingly replicate these legendary voices.
We know it can. The results are already driving grown adults to tears.
Even while purists detest the very concept as completely bogus.
The deeper, much more challenging issue we must confront is our fundamental definition of what a performance actually is.
Let's really unpack that. When you put on your headphones and close your eyes, what are you actually connecting with?
Let me play devil's advocate for a second. If a generative algorithm processes millions of data points from John's entire recorded history,
Every breath, every nasal inflection, every slight crack in his voice.
and it produces a frequency that perfectly maps to how he would sing a specific melody, hasn't it mathematically captured his essence?
If my ear cannot tell the difference, does the origin of the sound actually matter?
Is a vocal performance nothing more than a specific pattern of audio frequencies produced by the biological vibration of a human vocal cord?
It matters profoundly because music is not just biology and physics. It is intention.
The irreducibly human element of a performance is a person making an active, conscious choice to step up to a microphone.
On a specific day, in a specific room, and sing a specific word.
Every single ounce of their lived experience, their pain, their joy, and the current state of their relationships at that exact second in time is permanently baked into the magnetic tape.
So it is the vulnerability that makes it real.
Exactly. A machine cannot feel vulnerable.
When Peter Jackson's team used machine audio learning to clean up that Dakota cassette, they were performing a rescue mission.
They reached back through time and recovered a real fragile human moment that was almost completely lost to history.
Generative technology, no matter how flawlessly it executes the audio, is merely constructing a plausible simulation of a moment from a database.
It's the difference between finding a lost photograph of a loved one and commissioning a highly realistic oil painting of that loved one doing something they never actually did.
The output might look completely identical to the human ear, but the soul behind the microphone is absent.
It is a fascinating, slightly terrifying new frontier for art, and we're all figuring out the rules in real time.
Before we wrap up this exploration, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on as you go about your day.
It is a question that truly gets to the heart of everything we have discussed.
If you could hear a flawless, absolutely perfect artificial intelligence version of John Lennon singing a beautiful song he never actually got the chance to record.
And it was fully transparent, clearly labeled, and made with absolute, undeniable love.
Would that feel to you like a miraculous gift? Or would it feel like a ghost that simply shouldn't exist?
That is something every fan has to answer for themselves.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Whenever you feel like knowing more about the Beatles, visit us at BeatlesRewind.com. It's the Beatles, all day, every day, 8 days a week. Cass will do it again tomorrow. Right.
I wouldn't miss it.
Until next time.
When you listen.
Your mind conducts its own symphony.